Hey everybody, my name is Mike Montgomery and today I'd like to show you how I built these DIY abstract, asymmetrical, or blob style mirrors out of these cheap $7 mirrors on Modern Builds. So I'm a big fan of the abstract or blob style mirror trend that's been going around lately, but they are really expensive, and that's why I'm making mine out of these really affordable Walmart mirrors. I started this project by grabbing my utility knife and using it to score around the perimeter of the mirror. That way I could separate the paper backing from the frame. I was able to remove these frame pieces easily, although it probably would have been a good idea to wear gloves. After that, I tried removing the paper backing, but it was just stuck onto that glass. So really quickly, I grabbed some scrap 2x4s, and then I cut a black trash bag in half and used it like a tarp. I'm basically making a soaking tub for these mirrors. That way I can saturate the paper backing and hopefully remove it more easily. I prepped quite a few mirrors just in case if I had a few break. I even broke one getting it out of the frame. I let my glass sit in the water for a couple of hours, that way it could soak up as much as possible, and then I was able to use a Scotch-Brite pad to remove it right away. Before soaking these in water, I tested a window scraper and a chisel, and both of those scratched the mirror film on the back side of the glass. But this scouring pad did really well and didn't damage the mirror at all. And with all of that complete, it's time for our first glass cutting test. Now I had this broken mirror that I wanted to square up, so I grabbed my glass cutting tool, I used it to score along a straight line and then break it apart by hand. And the trick here is to make sure and support it on either side of the break. Awesome, that worked way better than I expected. All right, it's time to draw, and I'm just going for a random shape here, so let's go for it. I wanted as wide of a mirror as possible, that's why you see me drawing all the way to the edge, which I did end up regretting. All right, let's cut it. So first things first, I grabbed my 12-inch speed square and I used my glass cutting tool to score along that straight line just like before and break it off. And that sound you just heard from the scoring wheel is exactly what we're looking for. You want to make sure and have downward pressure and hear that sound. The first curved break went great, but it may have been beginner's luck. Aw, dang it. All right, let's see if we can save it though. This ended up being really easy. It just made my blob about 3/4 inch shorter. Okay, I'm feeling a little more confident, and now I'm gonna try this in one pass. It's a little heart-shaped, so I'm kind of nervous. Awesome! If I wasn't making a video, I probably would have stopped right there, but I wanted to get really clean breaks and learn some more tips. So my goal this time is I want to go all the way around the perimeter before I do any breaks in one pass. And as soon as I said that, I pretty much failed. I accidentally ran to the edge on the bottom of my glass, but I picked up where I left off and finished my cut. The first piece fell away whenever I was moving it, and everything else broke off super clean. Wow. I just had this little corner that I had to take off, I rescored it, and it broke away clean. My mission on blob number 3 was to make as big of a piece as possible, but still score all the way around it in one go, which I hadn't been able to do yet. That worked. The glass cutter that I'm using is super cheap. It was like $4 at Harbor Freight. I'll be sure to leave a link down below. I'll also leave links to some fancy ones that have an oil reservoir in the handle. Woo! Yes! It's perfect! Dude, that's so awesome. Now that Blob 3 was a perfect success, I wanted to make some smaller abstract shapes to pair with it. Just like before, I was winging it, making these random, just what looked good to me, and since I had 2 more of those large blobs, I also drew some companion shapes for them also. The tight corners on these smaller pieces were pretty tough. I just made sure to move really slowly and always keep vertical downward pressure. I was highlighting this project on Instagram, and a lot of people with experience were surprised that I was able to get these continuous cuts, especially on curves in glass. And I think that's because that I was using really thin glass. Not only is it super cheap, but I think it breaks pretty easy. All in all, my breaks were pretty clean, but I did sand them to smooth them out just a little bit. And now all of our glass is smooth and ready to be mounted. But first, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's episode, Keeps. Did you know that 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35? Well, the best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still got hair left. Keeps is a subscription service that makes it easier and more affordable for men to treat their male pattern baldness online. With Keeps, you start with an online doctor consultation to talk about your options and what might be best. Then you automatically get your product sent to your home, plus your doctor is always available to consult online. Keeps offers generic versions of the FDA-approved medications for hair loss, which makes it more affordable. Not to mention, product is shipped directly to you every 3 months. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I started using Keeps last year when I started noticing a little bit of a widow's peak. But so far, so good, and prevention is key. Keeps treatments usually take about 4 or 6 months to start seeing results, so make sure and act now. That way you can save the hair that you've still got left. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, make sure and follow my link that is keeps.com/modernbuilds for 50% off your first order. One more time, that is KEEPS.com/modernbuilds. Thanks a lot to Keeps. Now let's get back to the build. I'll be using 1/2" MDF to create backers for these mirrors. It's gonna allow me to mount these onto the wall more easily. It's also gonna keep these really flat. Since this glass is really thin, it's also really flimsy, which can make it look like a funhouse mirror. After tracing the outline of each of my abstract shapes, I then traced a line about 1/2 inch inset around the perimeter, and this is what I'm gonna actually be cutting with my jigsaw. This way, it's inset from the edge of the mirror, and you really don't ever see it. It'll give it a cool floating look. And the reason that I'm using MDF instead of plywood here is it doesn't have any tension or tendency to warp or bend. I'm sure decent plywood would work here, but if I was buying new materials, I would recommend MDF. I sanded everything and rounded over the corners with 150 grit sandpaper, and then it was time to mount these onto the backs of our glass. You can see the 3 different designs that I made here, and I made sure to mark the side that I did not want to spray with an X, and then I grabbed a can of spray adhesive and I did a really heavy coat. I sprayed everything on, and then I let it sit for a couple of minutes before then adhering it to the back of the glass. I just did my best to line these up by eye, and then I pressed them down for about 15 seconds, and that was enough to give them a permanent bond. I wanted to throw these small mirrors up in my shop, so I just grabbed some double-sided mounting tape and I put them up on my plywood wall. For one, I was happy to see that these held, and 2, I was really excited to see how cool they looked. Each of the 3 mirrors are one of a kind, even though they're stylistically really similar. For 2 of the mirror sets, I used 1 large mirror with 2 smaller ones in each set. This looked really cool, but I also made a mirror pair using 2 shapes instead of 3. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I like the 2 blob or the 3 blob look better. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. What can I say? I couldn't be more excited with how these blob mirrors came out, and now I want to level it up and try and make as big of a mirror as possible. I'm sure people are curious. I used a Sharpie to draw out my shape and then acetone to wipe away anywhere that I needed to erase lines. I didn't have a dry erase board marker on me, although that would probably work better. I ended up making 2 of these large mirrors, but let's start by scoring and breaking the pieces for this first one. I'm not 100% sure why, but I think my scoring wheel was starting to dull because I was not getting that sound that I was looking for while I was scoring around the perimeter of this piece. And as you can clearly see, I did not get the cleanest breaks on this piece, not like the others at least, and I think that's why. It still ended up looking really good, but I wanted to improve on it. Okay, I've got a new glass cutter. Let's give it a try. Right away, I had high hopes because I was getting that signature sound that I was looking for, so I just made sure to work my way carefully around the perimeter. And I ended up having my most satisfying breaks yet. Oh, that broke pretty clean. Yes! Okay, upgrading to a new glass cutter was good. I think my last one dulled out. Perfect! Once I cleaned up any sharp edges, these mirrors were looking really fresh. So I followed the same steps as earlier to trace the outlines and then mark an inset line around the edges. I inset these lines about 1.5 inches since these mirrors are so large. And if you're not already, you should follow me on Instagram at Modern Builds. That way you can keep up to date with me in between projects. Online, I've seen mirrors this size go for hundreds up to over $1,000, so it's been really cool experimenting with such a cheap material and getting something that looks so custom and expensive. I'm sure eventually this style is gonna trickle down to stores like Target and you're gonna be able to pick one up for 45 bucks. But right now, they're still hard to come by and still not cheap. I'll be installing this mirror in my bedroom, and to do that, I pre-drilled a hole at an angle with an 1/8 inch bit, and then I used what's called a monkey hook by Ook, which goes right through drywall, and you don't have to hit a 2x4 stud or pre-drill, and it holds up to 35 pounds. And with that, we are done. So there you have it. I really love these tall single blob mirrors. Such a huge upgrade from the original $7 Walmart wall mirror. And my favorite part about this episode is how many different mirrors we're able to make, all one of a kind. And if you decide to build a DIY abstract mirror, make sure and tag me on Instagram so I can see, at Modern Builds. So as always, thanks a million for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's project. Make sure and click like, comment, and subscribe down below, and that notification bell, and we will see you next time on Modern Builds.